and thank you for joining me today. I'm Peter Waddell. I'm a senior partner in Cherith, Simmons, Learning and Development. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about clever leadership. So on the screen you can see our little clever leadership logo, and we are typified by the blue fish heading the other way from all the rest. That's because we're looking outside the organisation and we are saying, why do we do things like that? Can we do them better? We're constructively challenging the status quo. Why? Because even dead fish go with the flow. So a little bit more about it. It's a fresh approach to leadership and management skills, to knowledge, behaviours. It focuses on agility, resilience, and the ability to make a measurable difference to an organisation's performance or your own as an individual. It's an approach for a world where everything is changing. The constants we used to be able to rely on are no longer there, and the only constant is change itself. It's an acronym, of course, for 6 vital components, elements of the way we believe leaders and managers need to be now. Its derivation is from our 3 decades of delivering leadership development across all sectors in the UK and internationally as well. We are accredited by ILM and City and Guilds and AMSPA, and we're also an approved leadership apprenticeship provider, and Ofsted rates us as good, which is a 4-star rating. And these elements have come from those decades of experience where we've tried to pick the best techniques from every sector to build into the programs that we run and the qualifications we run, and to teach way beyond the syllabus. The syllabus will concentrate on those well-established theories that everybody loves, but we have added to that new and exciting and effective tools and techniques to get the job done. So let's look at clever leadership in depth. 6 elements: courageous, logical, empowering, visionary, empathetic, and respected. So I'm going to look at those each in turn, and with each of those I'm going to briefly introduce some tools that you can use under each of these headings. There is a more detailed explanation of those tools in the toolkit, which you can download after this. So, courageous. Clever leaders are not afraid of the truth and are able to set out that truth in a way which is neutral and authoritative. Often challenging the status quo can be difficult. We've evolved ways that you can challenge that status quo in a way which is safe, logical, objective, and more likely to be listened to. It's not about unfettered criticism. It's not about hacking into the organisation or people for the sake of being destructive or counterproductive. It is about a cool and neutral tone in covering these elements. But it is saying things as they are. It is taking calculated risks and making a constructive challenge to things that need to change to suit the way the outside world is. So it's got to be driven by what people want from us, what all the stakeholders want, and there will be multiple stakeholders. And when we start to look at a little bit further down the track, we're looking 3 years ahead to see what challenges will come at us from the inside, from the outside, and from those areas where we have no control, our stakeholders' wishes, what government does, demographics, etc. But some challenging thoughts, the 5 whys. Why do we do things the way we do them? If the answer is we've always done it like that, then it has to say, is it still right for now? Should we start with a clean sheet? The 7 wastes, which comes from production technique, is about identifying waste wherever it sits. In over-complex administration and processes, maybe, in waiting time between operations. And a very good tool for challenging the status quo is Blue Ocean. Blue Ocean is about reducing cost and increasing value and designing innovation. You don't have to be Steve Jobs. You can actually design innovation in a practical and analytical kind of way. Let's look at the vital elements of this. It's developed by René Morvonia and Kim Chan at INSEAD, which is the MBA Academy in Paris. But 3 propositions. A value proposition, that's not just money or price, that's do I see value in the process, do I see value in the service I'm given. So it meets service user needs, the users, the stakeholders, it delivers things that they want and expect. It has to be viable, it has to create a profit proposition that enables you to make money out of it, or if you are not a profit organisation, to be viable and stay within the budgets that you have. And it's also got to engage people. It's got to provide a people proposition that motivates people working for the organisation to buy in, to execute that strategy. So our diagram there shows costs coming down and user value going up, but the crossover is value innovation. 1 or 2 tools, let's just have a look at one of them. This is the 4-action framework, which we fondly christen ERIC. And it has 4 elements to it as part of the process for innovation. What can we take out that everybody else does? Because that's habit, custom and practice. If you think about the budget airlines, when they first burst on the scene, they cut out seat numbers, they cut out free luggage, they cut out free meals, they cut out flying to the premier airport, but they did deliver low cost, high value travel. If we can't cut something out, what can we reduce? Can we aim for a bronze standard or a silver standard rather than a gold standard if the market doesn't need a gold or bronze standard? What could we improve? What could we deliver that is over and above what people expect but still stay within our viability envelope? And lastly, what can we create? What can we do that was never there before? Has the added advantage that it's quite hard to compete with something that wasn't there before, and it may move us out of a competitive situation into a clear blue ocean where we can flourish. Let's move on to the L. L is for logical, my friend Mr. Spock's favourite approach. I can make a case for change based on my strongly held opinion. However, it's very easy to disagree with my opinion, however passionately I hold it. So in order to get traction and to get people to buy into what I want to do and to approve what I want to do, I need to present my facts in a rational and compelling way. That means I need to understand how to do research to get the facts and how to analyse that research once I've got it. I need to use evidence rather than assumption, anecdote and custom and practice, and not rely on opinion, hearsay or assumption, analysis rather than guessing. So these set of tools in the armoury really help us arrive at very convincing decisions and very convincing cases that others will take up. So in the toolkit would be how to use quantitative and qualitative research, how to use focus group surveys, interviews, how to analyse and deal with that information, that data, to find the story it's telling us, to look at forecasting, to look at value process mapping to understand where the bottlenecks and the unnecessary loops are in the processes that we employ, to understand the benefit of taking any particular course, what's the payback, what's the return on investment, and be able to compare alternatives in any situation for change in some objective way using decision matrices, even taking into the do nothing option as well, and to make a convincing case. So our 6-point case here, position, problems, proof, possibilities, proposal and plan, is a fairly bulletproof way of putting across your plan for change in a way that will get it accepted, provided the backing evidence is valid. Let's move on to empowerment. Empowerment has a kind of a soft feel about it. We would argue and say it's actually a very hard-nosed technique for delivering more with less, for developing your team and making the team more resilient. So clever leaders delegate effectively, and they develop their organisation through understanding the start point for their team, its strengths and weaknesses, and then developing. They drive change through engagement, involvement and ownership of the change from the very start. A key point, this a key difference. We're bad at this in the UK. We tend to hatch change in closed rooms and then come out and announce it and wonder why people resist it. We have a different approach. So in the toolkit for empowerment is knowledge of the team and knowledge of ourselves. What are we good at? What are we not good at? Who do we need to reinforce our abilities with? What does my team prefer to do within the team? Do they want to lead it? Do they want to be the creative person? Do they want to be the networker? What is my basic approach as a leader, and do I need to adopt different behaviours in order to make my leadership more credible? We will explore that with you. So, looking at team role analysis, looking at appraisals and coaching, looking at what needs to be done at what level in an organisation. Triage is a technique borrowed from the NHS. And it means that if you go to A&E, you won't see a doctor. If you do not need to see a doctor, you will see somebody who can deal with what you need to have done to you at the first point of contact quickly, also less expensively. So to help get a handle on where a team sits on its development path, we've invented the Northampton Grid, which we'll happily share with you as part of the toolkit that you can download from us. So continuing our journey through clever leadership, we come to visionary. Teams have expectations of leaders. They do expect leaders to have vision, to be able to see the way ahead. And it's a quality, an attribute which gives confidence to teams. So as part of clever leadership, we need the skills and the tools to see beyond the obvious and to prepare the organisation for the ever-changing future. So we've given you some effective tools and techniques for that process. Let's have a closer look. So Spectre is a horizon scanning tool. You may be familiar with Pestle or Steeple. Neither of those actually incorporate the C for the customer, the user, the stakeholder, whose expectations form a major part of the way an organisation might need to prepare for the future. So that's covered in depth. SWOT, I suspect people will be familiar with. However, Super SWOT is a more dynamic version, and more of that in just a moment. Gap analysis helps us to determine where we are, what's our start point, and where do we need to end up, and what's the difference. Force field analysis helps us to plot the impact, the strength of the resistances that we might find. Skinner looks at the motivation and the need to provide some payback for individuals involved in a change process to turn the vision into reality. And finally, a fairly radical approach, the infinity loop, which is based on sharing the challenges of change with the entire organisation or team from the outset, and then working with them all the way through to make the ownership of the final change plan that of the team or organisation, thus minimising resistance. So here is Spectre. It covers social, political, economic, customer, technological, regulatory and environmental trends. Those trends will impact the way the organisation must conduct itself to deal with the future effectively. Very few of those are in the control of the organisation itself. Social conditions, political movements, the economy at large, the customer's expectations, the pace of technology, the pace of regulation and compliance, and environmental impacts, all probably outside our control, but yet we have to react to them. Super SWOT turns the normal snapshot of a SWOT analysis into something a little bit more dynamic. So what are the strengths we have? How can we maintain those? What are the weaknesses? How can we fix those? What are the threats? How can we mitigate, lessen the impact of those? We will end up with a set of opportunities, things we could choose to do. We then elevate these to objectives, things we are going to do, And if we put those in some logical order, we end up with a change plan. And if we have followed the infinity strip approach, it's a plan that is owned by everybody. Let's move on to empathy. There's an expectation for leaders to be aware and mindful, to understand the motivation of the team and to influence others through an understanding of their point of view, not just their own, which means that they can handle quite difficult situations confidently, they will negotiate well and successfully, and they can resolve conflict and deliver agreement to remove blockages to progress. In the Clever Leadership Toolkit for Empathy, we start with Daniel Goleman's seminal work on emotional intelligence, developing emotional radar, and then the two pillars of motivation, Herzberg and Maslow. Wrap this into a development approach to the team using coaching, using the GROW or the Oscar method, and also embedded organizationally in Discuss, which is a conversation-based appraisal process with a coaching structure. It's interesting to look at quotes in this area. We think of empathy as a modern articulation of the abilities necessary. Machiavelli, you may not think of the first person to talk about when we talk about empathy, did know people well, and his 500-year-old work, The Prince, captures some of those very valuable insights. A little bit later, but still in the 30s, Dale Carnegie's book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, was brilliant at capturing the means necessary to establish rapport and support, and those we would endorse. Which brings us to our last letter in Clever, which is R. So R is all about respect. Clever leaders act as exemplars. It's a vital difference. They are not those who simply tell people what to do. They act in ways that they would like others to emulate and follow. And that's how they earn respect, through the mutual acknowledgement of the skills and experience of their team and coaching, but acting in a fair and unbiased way, being open to structured suggestion within the team, and are resilient and results focused because they have a good handle on the future. So in the toolkit for Respected is the adoption of open leadership styles, situational leadership, varying the leadership style for the situation or the individual. And we think a really good example of a framework for this is Kouzes and Posner's exemplary leadership approach, where it's about modeling the way, acting in the way you want others to, inspiring a shared vision. It's not just yours, it belongs to the organization and everyone in it, challenging the process, which we've talked about, enabling others to act through empowerment, and encouraging the heart through motivation and understanding. So let's just kind of wrap that up. If you want to get a handle on yourself against the Clever Leadership attributes, we've got a little skills audit which you can download and do a self-score on. And we've also got a toolkit which you're very welcome to, and similarly you can download that and we expand some of the things we've talked about here. How do we deliver this to Clever Leadership? It's embedded in all the programs that we run for managers, qualifications at level 3, level 5, level 7, and a lot of individually tailored programs which are custom fitted to an organisation and its needs, and can also be accredited. How do we deliver? 3 choices. We can come to an organisation and deliver on site. We can deliver through interactive, tutor-led online workshops, and those are open to individuals on our open access program as well. And distance learning, which is traditional distance learning, completion of workbooks, marking, submission, and then individual tutor conversations through our night school channel, as you think it's kind of out of hours. If any of that is of interest, let's talk clever. And we'd be very happy to have a no obligation discussion. Just get in touch about any need you or your organisation may have, and we'll see if we can find a reasonable solution. Many thanks for listening.